And that's important to us, it's important to you so that you know what's going on. And so we'll talk at the end of the meeting about what the next date for us to get together again and talk. So one of the things we need to do is we need to continue to work on strengthening our governance processes over all aspects of the gallery. We've made a lot of progress since the last time you've talked. We've got more work to do, but that's one of the focus points for us, is to continue to look at those processes and make sure we're happy with them, make sure that we all understand how they work and we can put them into practice. The second thing that's important is we need to stabilize the operating budget of this gallery. Now, in this detailed presentation, we provide you with a breakdown of where our money comes from in great detail, and you'll come to understand that a public gallery really means that the funds have to come from the public. You know, the town of Coburg provides us with some assistance. The town of Port Hope provides us with a very small amount of assistance. The county provides us with no assistance. We do get some money from granting agencies when we apply and qualify. We don't have anything that we can qualify for in the next short while. We raise money from membership fees, from events that we hold, and Dwayne talked about a few of those events where we raise money through that. We raise money through your generous donations. And there's many people in this room who donate on top of their membership fees and on top of these events. All that put together still isn't enough this year to balance our budget. We've looked at our expenses. We are really taking a very strict control of those expenses. We don't have a full-time curator at this point in time. And we don't have a second person in the gallery in the administration, which we had in the past. Even with those two expenses not in the budget for this year, we're going to have a shortfall of $22,000 based on just the current spend rate that we have. So our challenge is, how do we make the ends meet over the next 6 months? And that's where we need your help, and we need the help of the community as well. So part of our plan here talks about how do we seek out those revenue sources, and I'd like to review a few of them with you today. So number one, we need to approach the county. The county has not put any direct funding into this gallery. It's the Art Gallery of Northumberland in name, but the county itself has no financial contribution. We think that's wrong. We think the county should be participating. We think this gallery does stimulate economic development for the county, and therefore we're going to approach the county and negotiate some sort of assistance from them. And that's a to-do. We haven't got that yet, but that's on our list. We need to seek out some corporate sponsors. Dwayne talked about specific opportunities to sponsor programs like our outreach program, but we need to do that more often with corporate sponsors. And if you look at that plaque on the back of all those generous corporations and businesses that helped us when we did this renovation in 1997, businesses do want to help. They don't have unlimited funds. We have to ask them, we have to be reasonable, but we're not asking them. We need to start asking the businesses in this area for their assistance. The big companies, and based on what they can give, the smaller operations in the town and in the county. In order to do that, we need to engage some assistance with somebody who does this for a living, that goes to corporations and negotiates funding requests. And so we will be looking for someone, and we will be looking to pay that person to engage in all this hard work, because it is hard work. People don't just write a check because you pick up the phone. You have to go and tell them what you're up to, tell them why it makes sense to them to participate, and you have to invest in that activity before you will see the benefits of it. So we need to do that. We need to incent our members with some benefits at different membership levels. We need to hear back from you. What would be important for you if you paid a little bit more for membership fee? What would be extra value that you would expect from us? How can we give that to you? So in a way, you're helping us, and we're helping you by giving you some more value. So we're working on a package of different donation levels and see how that can work with you and with us. And we've had a lot of success with our fundraising events, but we need to build some more partnerships in with those fundraising events, as Wayne has said. We've had 3 successful events. We think these things are fun. People like coming to them, but they're really a fundraising opportunity for us. So we want to do them as frequently as we can. That makes sense, so that people have a good time, but they're also helping us through some revenue raising in these events. There are a couple things that we urgently have to do that require capital funds, and that mainly is concerned around our vault and the protection of our permanent collection. So we are a Category A gallery, which means that we have to have a preservation scheme for the art that we take in. And we have a vault in this building on the 2nd floor, and all our art's stored in it. But it's not humidity controlled, it's not properly controlled for fire damage, and we need to fix that. So we'll be seeking assistance from local or other granting agencies to help us with that. We think that's an urgent need, and we think we qualify for assistance there, but we've just got to get on to making that happen. The last thing we want to do is have some issues with this valuable permanent collection we've got. So we're going to work on that in the next few months, get that sorted out for the vault on the 2nd floor. The Municipality of Port Hope is a small contributor to this gallery. We'd like to approach them and ask them to help us a little bit more. And we all know that local government is strapped for funds, but they don't have a proportionate contribution. It's no secret, and I'm happy to tell you, that Coburg gives us $55,000 a year. Port Hope gives us $8,000 a year. So I think there's a little bit of room for Port Hope to help us out a little bit more, because we have an art boutique in Port Hope, and this gallery serves the residents of Port Hope as equally as it does the residents of Coburg. It just happens to be located in the town of Coburg. So we want to go to the town of Municipality of Port Hope, and of course, with the elections and the new councils turning over, we will be there just after the change of leadership, so that will make it a little bit more challenging to establish our story with them. But that's next on our list. This gallery is rented to us, this space is rented to us by the town of Coburg. So while they give us a grant of $55,000, which is very generous, some of that flows back to the town for renting this gallery. We want to ask the town of Coburg to give us some relief on the rent over the next couple of years, to allow that to help our cash flow position. Yes, it's coming out of the town. We're not asking them for more money to actually give us, but what we're saying is we'd like to give you a little less for rent over the next couple of years here to help our cash flow. So we'll be approaching the town of Coburg to ask them for some relief in that regard. Now we have a target number in mind. We'll see how that goes. We'd like them to waive about half of the rent each year, but we'll see what they're prepared to do. We talked a little bit earlier about our financial position, and in the past we've had a full-time curator. we don't have a full-time curator now. We have an acting director that helps us run the gallery, but we don't have a curator. In the short term, we want to engage the services of an accredited guest curator or curators over time to curate some of our shows. So we need that expertise. There are a number of qualified people that are available to do this, to help us out. Until we're in a position to make that decision from a cash flow point of view and to find the right candidate to have a full-time curator. So the quality of the curation will be kept at a very high level, but it will be different people helping us out until we're back into the position to engage and pay a full-time curator. Last but not least, there may be some works of art that are not in the realm of our permanent collection that can be sold, and where those funds are not earmarked to go back into the permanent collection. There's probably very few. There's probably very little money represented in those very few. But we're going to look at it because we don't want to leave any stone unturned. If there's some pieces of art there that haven't been earmarked for the permanent collection that say that they're permanent, we'll look and see if there's any opportunities there. Lastly, we need to, through engagement with yourselves and with the granting agencies, build back the confidence that this gallery, the members, the board of directors, all of us are in this to make it work. We've had some bumps in the road, and we talked about those in June. We're not going to go over those again. That's water under the bridge, over the bridge, but what we want to do is we want to demonstrate to them that we have a bunch of people who care about this gallery, and most of you in this room are here because of that reason, and others that couldn't make it tonight as well. And you have a board of directors that's fully committed to getting us back into the road of being a successfully funded gallery and having that high quality of exhibitions and programs that you come to expect from a public gallery, as we have delivered in the past. And part of that is to get to talk to you frequently. There are no secrets. We'd like to be open about what we know, and we'll invite questions in a few minutes. And we like to talk to you more often than once a year when you come to an annual meeting where we say everything's great, and let's vote, and everybody goes home. We need your participation, and we need your assistance. So the second piece of paper that you will have is the latest version of the financial statement and our estimate of what's going to happen. It says 7 months, but it should say 6. That's a typo, sorry. What we're going to spend in the next 6 months and where we're going to end the year on March 31st, which is our financial year end. And you'll see those numbers at the bottom in brackets. Those are negative numbers. That means with the spending that we're doing, and we've cut way back, we're still going to be $21,000, almost $22,000 short of having a balanced budget. And we really need to come in at a balanced budget. It would be nice to have more money than our expenses, and that's something to shoot for next year. But we really have to find a way to cover this $22,000 so that we're not running so close to the line with our expenses on a day-to-day basis. So the board's going to be working hard over the next few months to identify those sources of revenue that I talked about. We're going to work on how we can get sponsorships for our major programs, major exhibitions. We're going to try and step up and present to you a number of great fundraising events where you can have some fun and we can make some revenue for the gallery. And we're going to put a little bit of pressure on our politicians to help out here, especially at the county level where there hasn't been any contributions made. So with that in mind, I would say to you that this is the essence of what we call our recovery plan. Our next step is to start to do a 3-year look ahead of a business plan, a strategic plan for the next 3 years, to map out our strategy for our programs, our exhibitions, the things we're going to do in this gallery. We can only start that work once we've done this first step, which is to identify what we need to do in the short term, the next 6 months, and that's what we've done. The important thing is we've got to put it into action, and we need everybody's help to make it real. So I'll pause there. I don't know, David, you want to add anything before we take questions? But
I think the only thing that I would also stress is that this gallery has, for some years now, fallen on some rather bad habits, functioning not as a public Category A museum gallery, but as our little gallery, our little corporate gallery. That has drawn severe criticism from the OAC. They have a laundry list of things we need to address. Our inability to pay CARFAC artist fees, that's something we can't accomplish until we get some money. We have to get the debt down, and they know that. They also know that we cannot afford to hire a curator. They have said we need to have professional curatorial people. And their suggestion, which is what we're following essentially, is that we have guest curators. And we have quite a few curators within the area. We're quite happy to come and do that. People from the Blockman Gallery, people from Peterborough. That shouldn't be a problem for us. But there are rules and guidelines that this gallery must follow in order to maintain their credibility as a Category A gallery. And that's what we're working on as well. And I just want you to understand that going forward, we're going to straighten this out. And this gallery will be what it was for the last 10 years. I don't think of anything else. As you ask questions, I would ask that you identify yourself as a member, non-member, press, media, just so that everyone knows who's speaking.
okay, start.
Kay Jackson, I'm a member. Could you say a little bit more about those things requirements that must be met, as you just referred to, and some timelines in relation to that for the Interior Arts Council?
Well, the Interior Arts Council, we've met with the artist officer in Toronto a couple months ago, and while saying that she was pleased with our efforts, with what we are planning to do and what we are demonstrating on that, there were things that need to be addressed. Like I said, as the curatorial aspects, the quality of artists, we're not a local gallery. We need to be seen to be giving exhibitions to senior artists, to emerging artists. We can give group exhibitions, solo exhibitions to senior artists who have big careers. And we can go, one of the other things that is high on the agenda of the OAC, as in many government agencies in Canada, is our attention to Aboriginal people. We have 3,700 or more First Nations people in this county, and some of them are recognized artists. We need to ensure that we organize at least a group show, if not better, once in a while. That's important. It's important to the OAC, it should be important to us. Beyond that, it's really a matter of just getting down to the mandate. We need to, as Dwayne said, we're in the process of setting up a very ambitious education outreach program, which we think we can get funded with a corporate sponsor. And that will be a big plus. We're somewhat limited in this too, because John Taylor was here this past week. He was the original director of this gallery back in the 70s. He was in BC now, his family's gone over. And one of the things he said was he found it lamentable that our space had been depleted significantly over the past several years. And that means that the boutique, the offices, which were originally on the second floor, are up here now. So we have less space. When we have workshops, we have to have workshops in the Paul Kane Gallery. We shouldn't be doing that. We should have better accessibility, better space. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
My name is June McKenzie, my husband Michael. We've been members and donors for the last 20 years of this gallery.
Thank you.
I understand that you say you want to have contact and you want to have input and you want us to contribute. We have not gotten a piece of information for 2 years on this gallery. But what's going to be done about that? How do we get back on the list, so to speak?
Well, there's a couple things. One is there is a newsletter, and one of the things we need
We
to...
haven't done
Okay, so one of the things we need to do is please then just reestablish your address and all that. So we mail things out. We have a website where we broadcast things, but we want to have these public get-togethers more frequently than once a year. We want you to hear firsthand, because the newsletters tend to broadcast some of the events that are coming. We can't have these kinds of discussions in the newsletter. So we want to try and do this frequently.
Well, I was told this was mailed out last week, but we didn't get it, they just handed it to me today. So I'd like to get on the list, if we're going to continue to donate and contribute to this gallery, I'd like to be part of it.
Yes.
I'm a bit upset about that.
Well, I'm sorry that we've missed you on the list, and we'll take care of
We
that.
didn't know about any of the openings or any of the fundraisers or anything.
So we'll fix that.
I hope so.
Okay, thank you.
Ron Bolt, I'm one of the artists in the neighborhood. I had a conversation with John Taylor a couple of days ago. He mentioned the problem that the Peterborough Gallery is having. They're closing for 1 year because of an architectural problem. And the director, the curator, I wanted to work by the Ontario Arts Council, would pay their salary for a year. This sounds like a gift from heaven. Is that the case?
We can't hear you, Ron. Speak up.
Yeah.
So Ron is saying that the Peterborough Gallery is closing for a year to make some architectural changes, probably the ramp, right? Because it's a really steep and incline.
It's leaking in the wall.
And all that. And so it sounds like the curator is going to be paid by the Ontario Arts Council, is that
That's what
Ron?
John told me.
And so therefore, that curator will have some capacity, because they're obviously not doing things at Peterborough 100%, so we'll look into it.
Well, maybe she could be a full-time curator here for a year. That's
Right. Okay,
the whole thing.
that's good suggestion, thank you. Yes?
My name is Michael McKenzie, I'm a member. Waiting this is for Peterborough. Is there any possibility that any kind of strategic alliance between this gallery and say Peterborough, or the Northumberland Gallery, or the Edmonton Gallery, or Queen's University should be considered? Seeing to me that it could be something, right? I see the word.
Well, there is, okay, so the question.
We can't hear.
Okay, so the question was, wouldn't there be some synergies in working together with other galleries such as McLaughlin, Peterborough Gallery, to try and work together on some of these issues where we could, take benefit from their expertise and maybe availability of people? Did I get your question right?
Yes, going to the extent of having a formal relationship.
A formal relationship. So we've already started some discussions with McLaughlin, and they're happy to share with us some of their best practices and some of the things we can learn. And we will explore when we meet with them, which is in a couple weeks, what opportunities there are. There may be curation opportunities. there may be other opportunities in terms of the collection displays and things like that. So that's a good point. We haven't got anything lined up for Peterborough, but now that Ron has identified that there's an opportunity, I think there's some room to talk to Peterborough as well. Clarington is also close by, so there are a lot of public galleries. I think all of them are challenged with funding issues, some more than others. And so, yes, we will start talking to people in these other galleries. We'll see what those opportunities are. Yes.
David Doig. I was going to say I'm a member, but I'm not sure. Maybe I forgot to pay, but I have been a member for a long time. But I don't know if Michael was thinking in terms of going a bit further. I mean, in other words, having joint shows with
Yes,
and
yeah.
There are opportunities there.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So
Yes.
the-
Thank you.
So the question was, can you even think about going a little further, which is like having joint shows, joint exhibitions? Would that be something else that you could explore with these galleries? And the answer is yes, we can.
Especially with a permanent collection such as ours,
Yes.
it's fairly significant and
Yeah.
highly valuable. We should be able to move that around.
Yes.
Now, it has to be done correctly, it has to be done under proper environmental conditions and control. But yeah, galleries do this.
I was going to say, historically, galleries always do that.
Yeah.
They send out their educational programs, they send out their art, always they have done this,
Absolutely.
whether they're big or small, so I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, I think one of the comments I heard when I came to the timeline show and we had this wall, this beautiful red wall with a lot of things. A lady came up to me and she says, "It's so good to finally see that picture. I haven't seen it for 20 years." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Well, my family donated that to this gallery 20 years ago. It's the first time it's been up on a wall." And I think that's one of the issues with our permanent collection. We have a lot of good art. We have to find ways to make it available and seen by people more often than we have. And we had a very successful show this summer, and hopefully all of you had a chance to see that. But we need to do more of it.
Trying to put it a bit louder. There's an item here where you get so much money from COBA, $55,000. As far as I can remember, we used to exchange checks with COBA. In other words, they gave us $55,000 or whatever, and we gave them the check back for the rent.
That's still the case, but the rent is a little less than the 55,
Is it?
and we want to get it reduced even more.
Well, that's a good idea, but I was wondering about Port Hope.
Port Hope is just an $8,000 check.
Yeah.
And they do the same.
Yeah.
So you pay rent for that space in Port Hope.
We pay rent for, that's a third party, that's not owned by the town, it's owned by the person who has that little restaurant on the corner, he owns that. I think the rent is modest,
Right.
but he's not going to give it to us for free,
Right.
and it's not the town's,
Right.
but it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yes, this lady here first.
I'm Denny Manchi, I'm a member and I'm a journalist. 3 quick questions about the budget. Is the budget for hiring a guest curator, the cost of changes to the vault, and the cost of hiring someone to do corporate liaison within the $22,000 deficit for
So let me
the
talk,
next 6 months?
let me talk to each of those 3 separately. The cost of the vault would be a capital project which we would need funding for, so it would be an offset. So we would go to a prospective donor, and I won't prejudice any donor in particular, but let's use an example, just a name as an example. Let's say it was the Rotary. We would say to the Rotary, we need a little bit of money to find out what it's going to cost to do this change in our vault, and then we'd like you to help us actually make that change happen. We'd like you to try and fund the whole thing. So we would look at that as kind of being covered by that type of approach. The fundraising for the corporate sponsors, we would like to engage the right kind of person with the right experience and have an arrangement that is satisfactory to both us and them, which is more geared to success, pay for success. In other words, I don't want to use the word commission, because we would never write an agreement that way. But we would say, if you want to do some fundraising for us, we want to pay you on the basis of the success of that fundraising. If you come up empty-handed, we won't be able to pay you. If you are successful, we'll be able to pay you some amount relating to your success. So that's the second one. So that would be not budgeted because we don't have the revenue in, so we didn't put the expense in.
Right, okay.
The third one
Was
was
guest curation.
the guest curation. So we have to explore what those costs would be. Those would be an add-in to this budget because we haven't costed those. There may be some people that, to Ron's point, where it's actually covered and we could get lucky that there is no expense. There may be other occasions where we really need to provide some sort of a honorarium or fee to these people because curating a show is a lot of work, you know, and we're not necessarily asking people to do this without any payment, so we have to explore that. Does that answer your question?
Going
So lady-
to also the, just quickly, about the fundraising, bear in mind that many large corporations today, there's only one way to approach them, online. They have an online application, that's the only way you get their attention. And we've done this, and we've been rejected in one case, but we approached Enbridge, and we were rejected, but
I think the people that have been exposed to fundraising challenges know you have to build relationships before people know who you are and before they'll part with the money. And so while the last step might be to fill the application in online, if you haven't done that work up front with the company to tell them what you're up to, why you need some assistance, where it's going, how the money's going to be spent, the application just, you know, it's just another piece of paper to them. So that's the hard one. There was a question here.
I noticed the grants from Ontario are 000.
Yes,
Is that referring to the Trillium grants?
Yes,
If so, I was wondering.
and the OAC.
Okay, and when would we be eligible to tap into that?
Well, David talked about some things that we have to demonstrate to them to build their confidence back up that we're in the realm to qualify for some funding. And we're working on that. So there's a window of opportunity in 2015. It wouldn't be for the rest of 2014, is my understanding. But in 2015, we would explore that again based on the anticipated improvement in meeting some of those requirements that they have talked about. They like to fund capital projects. They don't like to fund your deficit of running your gallery, right? So we have to aim ourselves towards those things that they're prepared to fund. So they'll fund programs, they'll fund our outreach and things like that. So those are sponsorship of activities, not just a general, write me a check for $10,000. I think historically, the amount of money we have received from those areas at the peak time has not been large dollars. So that's not our salvation just to get some money from those areas. It's important and we want to pursue it, but we have to still supplement that with these other activities.
Rick, just to add to that, one of the key things they're looking for is a balanced budget. Or if we have a deficit, we need to reduce that deficit to zero over the period of 2 or 3 years is what they recommend. Now, it can be as long as 5, but you have to have in place a plan to reduce the deficit. That's one of the requirements. It doesn't have anything to do with the kind of art you put on the walls. It's purely financial responsibility of the gallery. The other aspect of this, I guess that probably covers it with SAP.
the other thing, the OAC, the Ontario Arts Council, provides an operating grant.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an operating grant.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you're doing with it. But it was never really high. It was maybe $18,000, $20,000. Today, that's 10, 15 years ago. Today, it's much less because it's much less money.
What we were told was that if we qualified, that we would get the money in fiscal 2016 for the gallery, it would be $10,000 a year. And if we qualified at the high end and we succeeded on all points, we could go as high as $20,000 for a year. That's not a make or break amount. And that's true of all the galleries. It's just a reduction in the amount of money the government gives to funding agencies. So it's true of Ontario Arts Council.
Yes, but the Ontario Arts Council have made some kind of a list of things that they find unacceptable. And one of the things I can remember was that we used to say to our curator, well, we must have a show for kids. And she said, if you have a show for kids, you'll lose your Ontario Arts Council grant. Right away. It's not what this gallery is supposed to be for. If it's a show for kids, it should be in the educational center, not here. And of course, there is a show for kids now. And the idea of the kids show is it brings in all the mothers and fathers and uncles and aunts. But that wasn't something that the Ontario Arts Council would approve of at all. So it'd be interesting to know when you really try and get re-established with what shows, you know. I mean, for instance, when John Taylor was here, there was a show of Hungarian folklore, which this gallery initiated, and it traveled. We lost our grant. It wasn't acceptable to the Ontario Arts Council. So they're very particular.
All right, so there's a couple things that I think we need to be mindful of. One is there's those guidelines that we need to meet and satisfy to continue to keep our public gallery category A status. And those are things we have to do. That has nothing to do whether we get funded or not. And some of the things that David talked about on the list have to do with what a public gallery should be doing and not doing.
I just wanted to interject here. I think everyone should know how key the vault is. I mean, that is, we can't even maintain our category A if we don't get our vault up to scratch. And so that is terribly, terribly.
Right.
And
So
should be
that's why it's on our
almost
list.
Oh,
That's why it's on our list, and we
You
need
bet.
to get busy with it.
yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So the second part is, what do we need to do to access funding? So we're focused on that first part because it's important for us to be able to maintain our status and be able to do the sorts of things that we should be doing. And then the second part is to access the funding, which, as Wayne said, is contingent on a few things, one of which is to kind of stabilize our operations. There's a question over here at the back. Yes.
Orally Collins, about the permanent collection. We heard last time that there were a number of pieces that were sold without permission, etc. But there
Yes.
also have been a number of pieces that have been sold with board approval, where the monies were put into the operating budget instead of, as they should have been, going to maintain public trust with developing and caring for the permanent collection. One question I've had is whether the OAAG, the Ontario Association of Art Galleries, would feel much better about the credibility and about the reputation of this organization if there was a plan in place to repay the money that was improperly taken from the permanent collection.
All right.
So I wonder if that's something that you thought about.
So they're knowledgeable about this because we share these things with them, so there are no secrets. They recognize that that wasn't a proper procedure, but they're also, I think, of the opinion that that whatever way we choose to deal with it as a gallery will not influence their decision going forward.
Are you talking about OAC or OAG?
OAC.
OAC.
Okay, but I'm talking about being a member in good standing of the Ontario Association of Art Galleries. The reason I mention it is because it goes to whether other institutions are going to be willing to play ball with you.
Right.
It goes to the reputation of this gallery outside of the community. And, you know, right now it's not great. I mean, I realize, I don't even know how much money is represented by those improper sales over the years.
$207,000
$207,000.
over a period of time.
mean, that's a huge chunk to chew off, but to me, as a stakeholder, it's hard for me to just hear people say that was in the past and we didn't know any better. You know, that's not feeling great.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what might be done to focus on the permanent collection. If it's resolved, permanent collection is something that you want to keep. It must be in the public trust. It must be cared for. It must be curated. And there's 207 or 207 that I think needs to somehow go back to rebuilding that collection.
So one of the things we want to do is we want to do some more research what our options are, right? One option is to say, okay, over the next 10 years, we're going to tax the gallery $20,000 a year to put the money back into the other bank account and buy more art with it, or we have other choices. We want to bring that back to this group in our next meeting. We want to bring the recommendations of how we deal with that, and we'd like the members, after we've studied it and we're looking to what that association has as an opinion, want to bring that issue back here for everybody to discuss and agree what we're going to do. Because we can easily agree to commit this gallery to pay back $207,000, but it's everybody around here that we're committing. We want to bring that set of choices back to this group when we meet again.
But I think because there are lots of fine points around what the professional practices requirements are to be a member of OAEG, I think it's hard for people in the membership to grasp if they don't have personal knowledge of that by virtue of having had experience professionally. I think it really needs to be discussed much more openly and much more broadly, because I think that $207,000 as it stands right now is still in the red. And even if the membership fully sort of had an educational session and understood why that was an issue, it does speak to our standing outside of this community. And if you as a gallery are flagrantly violating some of these professional practices, you're going to find it very hard to get other galleries that want to travel collections with you, that want to all of that kind of stuff.
So we agree it's an issue, and that's why we want to take a little bit more time to explore it before we have a proposal. It would be easy for us to say today, well, you know what, behind closed doors, we just decided to make an accounting entry and life is going on from there, and we didn't do that as a board. We want to do a little bit more research, and we want to come back to this group and tell them what our choices are, being informed by that association and other requirements that we have to meet. I think it's a good point, and that's why we're not bringing that issue to you today, because we need to spend more time.
But again, I have to say, I think it's really going to be critical to reestablishing the gallery, not just in the community, because they're just, we're in kind of a state of disgrace right now outside of the community, and there's a lot of work that will need to be done to bring this back to what it should be for the community, and to be able to get artists who have more national and international exhibition experience to show here. Yeah.
So we agree it's an issue, and we will come back and talk about it in a lot more detail at our next meeting. So, thank you. Yes.
Felicity Pope, I am a member of the group. I acknowledge the very energetic efforts you've been making over the last few months to raise money and to deal with the financial issues which are absolutely we face. But I wonder if you could tell us what have you been doing, what efforts have you been making what steps has the board been taking to educate itself so that it really understands the responsibilities of the fiduciary responsibilities of public board members and public companies?
We have a meeting on the 19th of November with the Robert McLaughlin Gallery officers and curators. They are going to educate us in
With
terms of...
the chair of the board?
I'm sorry?
you met with the chair of the board of the Northumberland?
Irina Orlovsky has, yes.
Oh, you met in November?
They will be coming here in November.
Oh, really?
She met with them a couple of weeks ago before she left the country. And they're very eager to help us out in this respect. Because you're quite right, this is critical. But I would say over the past 10 years, this gallery has not operated according to guidelines. No, that's not a surprise. And it has to change. It's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. This culture of this gallery has to change.
Yes, I realise that, and so I just wondered what steps you're taking.
Well, that's one.
We're starting.
Yeah.
We're starting. We're not there
And
yet.
of course, we consult the OAC.
So take a question over here and then we'll come back on this side.
Thanks, Rick. My name's Andrew Bunton. First of all, thanks, Rick and Dave and Dwayne, for your work tonight. You said in June this was all about transparency, and you're showing us that with these steps. So thanks for that. I just had a comment to make about sort of stitching together a couple of points that you made. We were talking about membership and maybe stepping membership levels. And I wondered about some of the work you've been doing with other galleries and connecting with other galleries, and maybe making a membership level that would, whereby somebody might have an articulation of being paying for a membership here, but also get you into the Art Gallery of Ontario or a larger gallery, even out of province, out of country, making some connection. I realize we've got some fences to mend, as our leaders talked about, but maybe there's steps that we could make where we are doing more than one thing at a time.
Right. So that's what we meant, Andrew, when we were talking about how can we enhance the value of these levels of membership for the members, and we're going to be exploring that as well. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because if you're a member of always the Art Gallery of Ontario, you get admission to their exhibitions, you get events, service, all kinds of stuff. So we need to explore that for sure. Yes.
Can you comment as to where we're at this point in time in relation to audited statements and auditors?
So our auditor is the same auditor that we have retained for the last couple of years. The latest audited, fully audited statement was March 31st, 2014, and that was presented to the membership at the annual general meeting. What we have given you is the interim results for the 6 months ending September, which has been prepared by management, meaning our own team, not audited yet. We believe that it has integrity to it. David O'Neill is our bookkeeper. He happens to work for the town of Coburg as their bookkeeper as well, so we have trust and faith in his numbers. We review them every month. They are not audited statements till we get to the end of March 2015.
And I guess the point that I would make is that the statement was handed out at that meeting, but there was not a review really in relation to the audited statement and the concerns. And, you know, as you're mentioning in terms of the 207,000,
Right.
you know, we don't really have a complete picture here. We have an operating statement.
Right.
But, you know, what is the complete picture? Are there other outstanding issues?
So my understanding, and I've not talked to John Willico personally, but he did sign those statements as our auditor, that the financial issues, not necessarily some of these issues like David alluded to and I alluded to with OEC and things like that, the financial issues are fairly represented in the audited statements, meaning the way he stated the numbers and restated for the previous year to take into account the juxtaposition of the flow of funds is the facts of where it landed. Okay, so if you'd like more discussion on some of those details, we'd be happy to talk to you separately. We weren't tonight prepared to go through the last 2 years' financial statements. I mean, it's important to understand where we are. trying to look forward from there. We have to deal with this issue that we're talking about, for sure. There's a question. This lady's question. Two questions, okay. If I wait longer, maybe three.
With the collection on the second floor, and you're trying to preserve it, is there adequate insurance for it? And the second part of the insurance question, have you been able to reinstate your director's and officer's liability insurance?
Yeah, yes to the second question.
Good.
Okay. First question is there adequate coverage? Well, we have coverage, but you know, the collection hasn't been valued at fair market value for some time. Its pieces have been valued as they have come in, right? And those have been recorded, but is that today's market value, replacement value, et cetera? We don't know. There's money to spend to do an upgrade of those valuations to then be in a position to justify higher insurance coverage if it's needed, and have the facts if you ever have to make a claim.
So the insurance is covered in this?
We haven't budgeted, the current insurance premiums are in here. We haven't budgeted for revaluing the collection. We have not budgeted for that at this point in time.
Okay, my second question is, this gallery is so Coburg-centric, yet it's named the Art Gallery of Northumberland. What is the outreach for the communities? Campbellford, I mean, there are never any shows there, there's never any outreach there, you're never soliciting funds from the county. It's just, you're so reliant on Coburg and somewhat Port Hope, and I just think there should be greater outreach in order to satisfy the name of the gallery.
So one of our initiatives, excuse me, one of our initiatives will be to, we have, this also is going to take some money, but
I can't hear you.
when we have the money, one of our initiatives will be to go beyond this area with a boutique as there is in Port Hope, in Campbellford and Brighton. That's one thing we can do.
But what about going back into the schools? What about going into the hospital to display work? What about just better community outreach in order to represent the name of this gallery?
So I think the county is going to be asking those questions when we ask them for some financial assistance. So in order to present our case to the county, we have to be thinking about some of those things. And we haven't got the answers for you yet.
Sorry to butt in, Rick, but I think Rick and David mentioned earlier that what we're planning to do is a strategic plan. And that strategic plan is going to look at exactly those issues. What is the breadth of this gallery, and how do we go about reestablishing it in other locations? So it's input to that process, but you know, we've got some ideas about what we want to do and that kind of thing, but we haven't really gotten to the point where we've made decisions, because we're really trying to stabilize and then build a plan that we can actually have some faith in going forward. So that's the kind of input that would feed that strategic plan over the course of the next 2 or 3 years.
So there's work to do.
And then I can't help but elaborate on a point that's already been mentioned, and that is the $207,000. If you follow what's been going on in art galleries in the United States, you will find that there are a number of galleries that have sold work from their permanent collection knowingly to raise money for operational costs. Now, they have done that. Their view is they're doing it because it's either that or close the doors. And the alternative view is that if you do that, you harm the donation mentality. Why would someone give to a permanent collection if it's at risk, if it can be sold at any time? And so the galleries, and I think this is what Orly is referring to, some of the galleries that have done this in the United States are subject to sanctions from or the organizing body, really. It's a loose association of art galleries in the U.S. And they say, please sanction these guys because they sold work from the permanent collection. Now, the organizing body asks for this of their membership, and some members do, some members don't, but in effect, members can. And some of those sanctions are things like, you don't loan to that gallery when they want to show. You're not going to loan the piece that might be valuable to their show because they've sold pieces from the permanent collection, or you don't travel, you don't put on a traveling show that goes there. That kind of thing can happen. So that's just background for what is being raised here. It's an issue, it's a serious issue, and we have to figure out what we're going to do with it. And that's what Rick and David would say, yes.
Yeah. Somebody suggested that the financial statements are not complete because they don't contain, let's call it a contingent liability of $270,000.
I think they're reflected in the financial statements. Not the one I handed out today, but the audited statement that was handed out at the annual general meeting. And we can talk more about that one-on-one or have a separate discussion about that. But it is clearly identified that deficit, that loan of funds, that flow of funds, that's been specifically stated and identified in the audited statements.
Because somewhere somebody has to bite the bullet on that.
Yes, and that,
no way.
right.
Yeah.
So the big picture is we have this valuable collection. We don't have the current market value established yet because we haven't valued it, for some time. And of that valuable collection, $207,000, which should have been used to replenish that with other artwork or preservation activities or things relating only to the permanent collection, has been taken out of that permanent collection. And so the question is, what are our choices in dealing with that? Because it's gone, right? It's gone because it was paying expenses of running the gallery over that period of time. And we can talk about whether it should have happened. We all know it shouldn't have happened. It did happen. So now we have to deal with how do we move forward from that and be very transparent with you, the stakeholders and members, about what the choices are.
It would never have been intended for anything else but operating expenses. It wouldn't have been intended to replenish the rest of the artwork because it wouldn't make sense. I mean, you'd be simply swapping.
No, that's true. I mean, it was, and let me, it's before my time, before Rick's time, but it's my understanding that most of this was sold without board approval. This did not have board approval.
Like, what are the numbers? Because when I looked at the statement, it was 40-odd thousand that was identified that is currently under investigation, which leaves,
That's not under investigation. I'm not going to get into the investigation, but let me just say that the art pieces that were sold, that's not part of the investigation, but
right, no, I know that, but I would like to know, out of curiosity, how much of it is part of the criminal investigation, how much of that was sold with board approval? Because it really speaks to the need for the board to become educated. I'm so happy to hear that that's happening and that you're seeking consultation with McLaughlin, etc.
So I think it's our intent when we have our next meeting, and I might as well throw a date out now. We'd like to talk to you again at the end of January. We know there's a holiday period in between. It's already mid-October. We need some time to action some of the items we talked about. So we will be convening another one of these meetings at the end of January, towards the end of January. And that item will be an agenda item for full discussion. So between now and then, we have to do some homework. We don't have all the answers for you.
Can I ask, actually, it might be a more constructive question. And I was just curious, because of this issue of theft by conversion, in some sort of way, those pieces that were sold by, I think most of them went to Mayberry Gallery for private sale. I just wondered legally if there's any possibility of getting that back, since the work was, theft by conversion is a form of theft. I wondered if you explored whether there may be a way of having that returned, since it was sold under the proper false pretenses and proper.
we did, I don't know about that specifically, or we did recover pieces before they were sold.
before they were sold.
We have recovered, there's still 10 missing.
We can't hear.
There are still 10 pieces missing. We are trying to find, we found 4 or 6 of them. Stupid things happen. 2 pieces were sent to Queen's University 10 years ago.
Can I talk to that, David?
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
Charles. I'm the collections chair. Out of the 14 pieces that were reported missing at the annual general meeting, 4 have been found, two of which were sent to Queen's in 1980 something, 86, 88 in there somewhere, to be restored. 4 actually 4 portraits were sent to Queen's to be restored. We got 2 of them back, and we never received the other 2, and they just sort of got lost in the mist somehow along the way. And we've discovered through Dwayne's looking at the internet and following these clues, and through board efforts, that we found these other 2 portraits at a museum in Belleville called the Glanmore Gallery, the Glanmore Museum.
Where?
Glanmore in Belleville. And they are in the, and Dwayne has been working diligently with them. They are in the middle of deaccessioning those works, which will come back to us. So that accounts for 2 portraits, those 2 missing portraits. A third piece, Dwayne and I were in the basement working on the permanent collection stuff, which is storage space down the basement. There's all sorts of things in there. We're trying to tidy it up and look for catalogs to bring up here for the collection. And I found the Enigmas book, which is one of the missing Harold Town piece that we had listed as well. I didn't know at the time, it just said Enigmas, but I didn't know whether it was a book, whether it was exactly what it was. But anyway, so we have found that third piece, and it is now secure. And the 4th piece was actually a piece that I found at the police station that had been there all along, but had not been recorded.
On display.
It was in one of the offices in the police station. So I didn't know it was there, nobody knew it was there. So we got a really good, solid inventory and found it there. So those are the 4 pieces that have been found. Still, there are 10 pieces missing. Most significantly being the Varley and the self-portrait by Kokoschka. So that's where we're at the moment. That list of work has gone to police, who are now also cooperating with the OPP, in investigating the what is it?
The RCMP.
The RCMP, looking at stolen, lost work in this work. So
I think even the ones that were improperly sold, that $43,000 worth or whatever, I mean, you know exactly where they are, and Mayberry knows who they sold them to. I would be curious about getting a legal opinion about getting them back.
that could be, actually I did talk to somebody recently about that, and they were saying, lawyers who deal with fraud, and they were saying that it's, I don't want to say too much, but that's a possibility. I think it's remote because the director had authority to act as an agent for the gallery, and so they, I think you could get the work, you might be able to make that claim if that person wasn't an agent of the gallery or didn't have the right to do that. But I think she probably did as the gallery director. So that's to be investigated. That's a good point, and it should be looked at.
Mayberry may be interested in playing ball for their own reputation.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, because it would come out of there. If that was the case, then that would come out of there. They would have to apply to their insurance. Yes?
Yeah, just a question at that point. Do you know whether the Ontario Association of Art Galleries has been informed of these missing pieces? Because someone might bring them into a gallery to sell.
Well, they've been listed, and the police have the list, and they've dispersed the list, I would think, pretty widely. I don't know exactly how they do that, but they have their own.
I think Rob has a really good point. You need to send it to the Art Dealers Association of Canada, because they will send out a bulletin to all members so that any commercial gallery that receives that knows that it's on the list of things to be looked for. So it's Art Dealers Association of Canada.
We have a very patient person here asking a question.
Well, my question falls right in line with what you talked about. I was having the collection committee report at the annual meeting, which lists 22 pieces that at that point in time, you could locate and whether they were acceptable.
Right.
And I guess what I'm asking is that in future meetings, can you formally update us on what progress you're making in identifying these and what you're doing about it? And is there any financial recovery to this gallery in any part of this?
Right.
It seems to me this is an important issue to pursue and then report formally back anytime we do it.
Absolutely, that's why I think I probably would have said this probably later in the meeting than what I ended up doing, but this would have been gone over and told you, where we are. Things are very active. Police are involved, RCMP is involved, the insurance company is also involved. So, we are definitely taking the steps that we can to move forward with it. As I say, when I did the report in the beginning, the work, all I could comment on was the work was not in the vault. We couldn't identify where it was. As I said, we have found one in the basement, found one at the police station. So, things happen, and you just got to keep looking and keep doing what you can to find them.
So that's a good point. At our next meeting, we'll give another update on what's happened between today and our next meeting on that topic of locating those other 10 or how we're going to deal with that.
Well, we should date from the annual meeting, because that's where this listing
Yes.
is formally made.
Yes. So of those, of that number that were reported, our meeting was mid-June, right? Our annual
Yeah.
meeting. Mid-June, Charles prepared that report, so he's head of the collection thing. He reported where we were as at that point in time. Where we are today is 10 are still missing. Okay, so in between, we have closed the gap to 10. And then, as he mentioned, we're pursuing how to find those other 10.
But of the 10 that are not missing, didn't get any money.
We haven't got any money.
You mean from the insurance company?
No.
Or anybody.
From anybody, no. Not yet. I don't know. That's what we're investigating. Because, it's a complex issue in terms of were they sold or are they still floating around somewhere?
If you buy something that's stolen, you can't acquire legal title.
Well, I don't see any lawyers in the room, and I don't think we should be discussing this because we don't know, and we're better off consulting someone who can advise us on this. The theft by conversion thing, I don't know that it has anything to do with these pieces that we sold.
Nothing.
No, it isn't. Now, you may think it's theft by conversion, but
I'm only speaking to what we've been told. I mean, I don't know.
we gotta be sure we listen to
That's what we've
So I
been
think-
told.
Better off to go down to the police station and talk to those guys because they have,
So the next meeting, we will talk about where are we with the 10 that we think are still missing. Hopefully we'll have some better news than say that they're still missing. So we continue our efforts. Yes.
My name is Tom Groot, I'm a member. Listening to everything that's been said tonight about how sensitive we are or should be about the permanent collection, what Dwayne said about what some people think of galleries that do dispense with part of their collection. Your comments in here that say the board, the AGN may recommend selling some pieces from the permanent collection.
Just the ones that are not accessioned in. So there may be a couple miscellaneous pieces. So accessioned in, do you want to give the formal definition?
Well, I think what you're trying to say is you shouldn't have said from the permanent collection, because if there weren't these in the permanent collection, it's accession.
Correct.
Right?
So it would be things that are not in the
So we do have a few pieces in the gallery, in the vault that have not been accessioned.
Meaning they haven't been here long enough or?
Meaning that they haven't officially gone through a process of accession, of bringing them into the permanent collection. So at this point, there are some pieces in the vault that, so we've gotten an estate, for instance, some of which was accepted into the permanent collection, and some of which was not. So we are free to deal with those works in whatever way we choose. So we could sell them at auction, or we could do whatever we feel is necessary.
Well,
We're
it's,
supposing that there isn't a material amount of value there for the very reason that they have to meet some criteria to go into the permanent collection. So it's only, and that's why it's the last point on the list, because it's low probability of raising any significant funds.
Charles, who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of whether they come into the permanent collection?
Well, the process is, say you wish to donate a work to the gallery, you come to the gallery and you would go through Frances as the director, and she would fill out what's called a deed of gift, which lists the work and all of the pertinent information. And that work would be then brought in front of the collections committee, who would look at the work and discuss as a group what it felt, whether it would like to have the piece in the collection, whether it was relevant to the collection. It would take into account its, for instance, its condition, or somewhere that you really like to have, but you look at it and it's in poor condition and you go, well, we can't afford to restore this piece, so we won't accept it. So there's all sorts of conditions. And if the work is then accepted by the collections committee and we decide that we would like to have it in the collection, then I as the chair would present that to the board, who would then vote whether we would accept it into the collection. So that's basically the process. And then the director would then, this is the part that I don't really involved in, would have to have an appraisal done of the work that the donor would normally pay for, and then the donor would be given a tax receipt to that amount.
And the donor make a stipulation that I'm so.
The donor could make a stipulation as that, yes. If it's in the permanent collection, there are things that, permanent collections do change, and they do, that's why you deaccession work. If the collection is trying to tighten up in one area and wants to focus on another area, that's why those kinds of things happen in the industry.
Sure, just to clarify that when people donate artwork to the gallery, they can donate it in two ways. They can say, I'd like to donate this to the permanent collection, and it goes through the process that Charles mentioned. I'd like to donate this to the gallery for the gallery to use as it pleases. No strings attached. And it might be thought this is a great piece and fits well for the permanent collection, and it would go through the process, but it might be felt this isn't part of the collection, this doesn't fit our requirements, and then we would be at liberty to sell that piece.
So the person would still get their tax receipt for the value of that piece, but then we are free as a gallery to use it for, say, operating expenses. We can use it for whatever function we decide.
But in answer to your question about you can't sell a piece, or your statement about that, in actual fact, there's a full transfer of ownership. So the gallery has 100% ownership of that, and it precludes any considerations or requests to that point. Now, the implication, as has been pointed out, is that as a public art gallery, we will not sell it. We will keep it as a part of the collection. And if we decide that it doesn't fit our collection because we've changed where we're going with it, or we've changed the theme, then there's a protocol for releasing it from the collection that would see it being placed perhaps in another public art gallery that would still make it, in the public realm, but it would fit better with another gallery.
Yeah, so that's a deaccession. You've accessioned the work. If you want to deaccession the work, the process being that, again, it would go through committee, it would go through the collections committee to the board level. The board decides that that's fine, then it would be deaccessioned, and that process is usually the piece should be, first step would be offered back to the donor. So that would be the step number one. Then it would be to other public galleries and so on. And finally, the last stage would be to sell that auction or to sell
But
it.
if you do sell it, then the board's decision, you can use the monies in whatever way.
Well, no, if it's...
My understanding always was we're back into the collections committee.
Yes, if it's a permanent collection piece, the money should be coming back into the collection.
And that was
For taking care of the collection.
And then that was the issue around the $207,000. It didn't find its way back into that. There's a gentleman back that's been very patient.
Thank you. Hi, I'm David Turk, a councillor from Port Hope, and I know Port Hope has been mentioned a couple of times. I don't want to get into politicking tonight, but I would like to stress an urgency to the board that budgets are being set, and you should have your requests in as soon as possible. And second to that is we know we are going to have a new mayor in Port Hope, and may there be somebody from the board, possibly tomorrow night, at our high school that might be able to finding out, where is their position in regards to the Northumberland Art Gallery and further support. Okay? And I rest my case.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Keith Stratton. I'm a member. I wonder if the board's consulted with some of the prominent people in Coburg and Northumberland who have extensive connections with the businesses and organizations and the political, the county organization as well. There's a gentleman who sells flowers on Vision Street, for example. There's two
know who that is.
who I would have to mention the name. And there's two former mayors, and there's probably quite a list of other people who have, as I say, extensive connections. And perhaps over a cup of coffee at the Dutch oven, we get some help in terms of getting some money out of corporations and businesses throughout Northumberland.
So the answer is we haven't done enough of that, and that's the work ethics. And those are good suggestions, and that's what we need to do to access some of that availability of these funds. Thank you. Yes?
You've used an expression, you've said that so many works have been found and so many works have not been found. Now, the ones that have been found, what does that actually mean? Does it just mean you know where they are?
It means we've got possession.
You've got possession?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I mean, we got possession of them, and it's with our consent in the police station hanging on the wall.
There's this one.
Now, some were brought back from Toronto from a neighbor before they got a chance to sell it.
So it's just 10, you don't know where they are.
Correct. So 10 we're still.
I appreciate we're talking about the immediate budget and the shortage that's coming up in the next 3 months. But following up on David's question, I'm curious, are these 10 that are still unlocated, are they missing from just recently? Or is this also over a period of 10 years, as I suggest, as you mentioned, maybe the picture hanging at the police station?
So I'll let Charles answer in detail. The answer is we don't know when they went missing.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know when the last really official audit had been done. I mean, I think audits have sort of been, or collections sort of been looked at over the years. But I couldn't give you a date myself from looking at things exactly when things were gone into this, really detailed as we have. So as we're saying, these portraits have been missing for 25 years. 25 years, or 30 years, almost. So, we are going from where we are and moving forward. So as the pieces are missing, some of them you can say, because they might have been on exhibition and such, it's been missing maybe since this date or that date. But most of the work probably, I don't know when it was gone missing. All I know is it's not there.
So just to summarize, thank you for all those good questions, and there's some good suggestions for us to follow up on. What we'd like to do is be open for any of you to contact us at any time with any further questions, but we'd like you to put in your calendars towards the end of January another get-together like we had tonight, where we will update you on our progress on our recovery plan, update you on the issue of the $207,000 and what our choices and options are that we can talk about, update you on what success we've had in locating those other 10 missing items, if we've had any success, and or any negotiations with the insurance company or other parties related to those 10. Okay? And at the same time, what we're working on is that forward view of our plan for the next 3 years. So I think there was a comment about our outreach beyond the borders of Coburg and Port Hope. We need to deal with that. We need to deal with our programs in general, our exhibition mix and focus that we're going to have. And we also have to address the issues that we talked about, which is our granting agencies and the agencies that govern us need to be satisfied that we are healthy, vibrant, and on the road to success here. So all of that's a big tall order, but that's what we're going to talk about in January.
Is there any federal money available at all? I mean, you've got federal 000, but is there any money, you think?
We believe between now and March 31st is zero.
There are two programs, heritage programs. Okay, we talked to Rick a lot about this, but you know very well what the federal government's been doing the last few years. Not in art, not in science, not in culture, okay? But there are two things we can apply for, but they're very specific. You need to apply for them. There's a seniors type of program that we could apply for. We could fit it in somehow. That could get some money. Because Brighton, they got money, Trenton got money for something similar to this. But they're very specific. You have to go through the whole application form. And as of a couple of weeks ago, they're not accepting applications, oh, by the way. So you have to keep going online and checking.
Would that be the New Horizons for Seniors program?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the other angles that we are pursuing is we understand from some of the other galleries with an accredited active education program that we can recover from the relative boards of education some of those funds for presenting those to students. So we're working on that. That's something we're working on over the next couple of months to see what are the criteria, how do our programs fit into that, is that another source of funding that helps sponsor that important activity?
Just one, as many of you know, I'm a curator, and I've been involved in doing pop-up exhibitions and different community outreach programs in Port Hope. And we do currently have grants from Ontario Arts Council and from Canada Council. And we as a group would love nothing better than to have something like the AGM that we could cooperate with, but we'd have to feel assured within our board that we were, working alongside somebody who was following professional practices and professional ethics just for our own survival, because we don't want by association to be in a position where our Canada Council or our Ontario Arts Council funding gets cut off. So I think there are lots of possibilities for fruitful collaboration, and we'd love to. I'd love to speak with you about it.
I appreciate that, Rory. It's a very good point. Yeah.
So the last thing I would remind you is this document is a more detailed discussion about some of the items we talked about today. So the topics in here, we talk about our programs, we talk about our finances. There's much more detail in here about the permanent collection, the kinds of works that are in there, how many are in there. We've done, as David has alluded to, a strategic scan of the county and the constituents of the county. That's how we know how many Aboriginal people there are from the last census. We talk about the people who are involved. We list them all here so you know who we are, who our bankers are, who our auditors are, etc. We talk about our recovery program. We talk about the fact that we're going to come back to you with a discussion on our strategic plan going forward.